Well, the MAHA movement has been pushing to keep poisonous chemicals out of our bodies, and one of the strongest voices in the fight, of course, has been RFK Jr. He argues that America's reliance on pesticides is literally poisoning Americans, and he's been calling for an urgent phase-out of these harmful chemicals. But when pesticide use recently landed on the MAHA agenda, guess what? 79 Republican legislators fired back, demanding in a letter that the MAHA Commission drop the issue altogether. Yeah. They claimed chemical-intensive farming was the only way, a claim that is not true. Organic farmers have been proving this for decades. It's possible to grow healthy food without toxic pesticides. Well, joining us tonight is Dr. Kendra Klein, a writer, researcher, and fierce advocate specializing in food, agriculture, and public health. She's currently the Deputy Director of Science at Friends of the Earth, leading their groundbreaking work on pesticides at UC Berkeley. Dr. Kendra Klein, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Kim. Very happy to be here.
Okay, so why in the world would companies want to use pesticides? Why are they fighting this? Why are the legislature, the 79 legislators, why are they writing in letters saying, let them use pesticides? I mean, just from like a basic, just economical point of view. If I were a company, adding pesticides to the food is a cost, I would think, not a savings, because you're having to bring in an extra chemical, add the chemicals to the food. So it seems to me like it would be better to cut that cost unless it's going to end up, but explain why they want to use pesticides. And then we're going to get into why they're so bad, and why the legislators are for allowing them to poison us. So let's start with why the big farms want to use pesticides.
Yeah, pesticides are a billion-dollar industry. So the pesticide industry is very effective at keeping these products on the market. I got into this work because my mom has had breast cancer twice. So many of us have family members who are sick. We've faced our own health issues. And we ask questions. Why are we getting sick? What can we do about it? And so I have dived deep into the science on pesticides. I know that if I tested you right now, if I tested anybody listening, I would find pesticides in your body. And not just one or two. The average American has up to 30. And they don't belong there. We know the science shows us even very small amounts of pesticides can derail the healthy functioning of our bodies. And we're seeing this in Wisconsin, where I'm from, all across the heartland. Women are struggling to get pregnant. They're having troubled pregnancies. Birth defects are on the rise. Pesticides have been linked to autism and learning disabilities, and also obesity and diabetes. So there's a lot of talk about addressing chronic diseases. Mm-hmm. And these pesticides can disrupt the hormones in our body that govern our metabolism. Mm-hmm. And so they're linked to chronic diseases as well.
What you say that there's a pesticide industry. So these are the manufacturers of the pesticides. How many big companies are there? Or is there like a handful, like a couple, or is it like loads and loads of these companies?
Yeah, now due to consolidation, there's just a handful. So we're talking about Bayer, and they purchased Monsanto. We're talking about Syngenta, which is owned by ChemChina. Dow and DuPont merged, and they have a pesticide arm called Corteva, and BASF. So really, there are four major pesticide corporations. And you mentioned the congressional letter. They have enormous influence over policymakers because they spend millions every year lobbying.
Okay.
So,
But what is it about the farmers that are the farmers being required to use the pesticides? Are they wanting to use the pesticides? Like ultimately, a pesticide company can only exist if the farmers are purchasing their products.
Our public policies incentivize, subsidize, lock in pesticide-intensive agriculture in the United States. This is over the past number of decades, we have had a guiding principle of get big or get out. Our farm policies are not supporting family-scale farmers. They're not supporting ecological approaches or organic approaches that prohibit pesticides. And also pesticide agents, if you're a farmer and you're looking for answers, what do I do about this bug or this weed? There are pesticide agents there ready to tell you, okay, here's the chemical, reach for the jug. And so farmers are really trapped in this system. There's a poll of Iowa farmers. 90% of them said that they felt they are trapped on a never-ending pest treadmill because they don't have the tools and the approaches that would allow them to get off that treadmill and start farming more in harmony with nature, more ecologically.
Can you explain that a little bit better? Like, what is it why are they incentivized to use pesticides, and how can they not get off the pesticide treadmill?
So let me go here. We know we can get off the pesticide treadmill because we have organic agriculture. This is now a $70 billion industry. We know that organic works. It is backed by federal law, and that law prohibits the use of over 900 different synthetic pesticides. Organic farmers are growing abundant food. So it's not really what's possible, is what are our policymakers willing to support and invest in. They could pass policies that would make organic farming the norm. They could pass policies that would help all farmers reduce their use of toxic inputs. That would take changes to the Farm Bill, a massive piece of legislation that gets passed every 5 years. And instead of us seeing great wins towards reducing pesticide use, one of the biggest fights each time the Farm Bill comes up and other huge pieces of legislation are these poison pill riders that legislators like those you mentioned that signed that letter to the Maha Commission are trying to sneak in language that would actually make it easier for pesticide industries to operate, to keep their toxic products on the market. They're trying to take away states' rights and local governments' rights to protect their citizens, to pass laws that would help protect kids in parks and at schools from pesticides. And so we're really in a backward situation where, we're not gaining, we're just fighting the harm.
Okay, so let's say I'm a farmer and you got two farmers. One's a organic farmer and one's not. What is it that what is the difference in what they're getting and not getting? So what is the organic farm not getting that the pesticide farm is getting, if that makes sense? Like, why would a farmer choose to be a pesticide farmer versus an organic farmer?
So all across the Heartland and Great Plains, we are growing millions and millions of acres of corn and soy. And this is not primarily grown to feed people. This is for biofuels and it's for livestock feed. We call these the commodity crops. This is the bulk of the Farm Bill. Billions of dollars are going to support that system that is growing commodity crops that is very pesticide intensive. So let me say this, as we're fighting to create change, we need to make sure that we're fighting for the right things. And what we're seeing right now, there's this term regenerative agriculture. Kennedy has been using it. Others in the Maha movement have been using it. But it has been co-opted by the same big ag and big pesticide corporations that are making us sick in the first place. So we just released a report about this. People can find it at organicforall.org. And those same acres of incredibly chemical intensive farming of corn and soy are being lifted up routinely as quote unquote regenerative. We found that, in fact, this is some of the most chemical intensive agriculture in the country, that so-called regenerative no-till corn and soy is responsible for a staggering third of all pesticides used in the country every year. So farmers are stuck in that system. This is not their fault. The pesticide problem we have is not on the backs of farmers. They are stuck in a system that keeps their head above water financially by subsidizing them to grow chemical intensive commodity crops.
Okay.
And organic farmers growing what we call specialty crops, like what we actually eat, the nuts and seeds and fruit and vegetables, they are not getting the same kind of support.
So the only farmers that are getting subsidy type support are those that are farming basically corn and soy that's used for other things other than human consumption. And those products are being heavily doused in pesticides.
Yes. And people have probably heard about Roundup. This is a weed killer linked to cancer. 2,4-D. This is a component of the Vietnam War defoliant Agent Orange. Dicamba, paraquat, linked to Parkinson's. These are the chemicals that are being used. They're antiquated. We know they're hazardous, and we're using millions of pounds every year.
Okay. And so if we're not consuming these pesticides, like if they're going on the corn and the soy that we're not consuming, what is the harm?
Well, for these particular crops, there's research being done. There's a study called the Heartland Health Study that has enrolled pregnant moms, and it's tracking their pregnancies. It's tracking the kids and outcomes. And we're worried about, there's research showing risks of troubled pregnancies, of preterm birth, of birth defects, because women who are living near fields where these chemicals are sprayed are suffering from that exposure. And in fact, we're seeing that there's a link between when women get pregnant and their risks. If they get pregnant, if their first trimester is during the months where we are most heavily spraying these fields with pesticides, they have higher risks in their pregnancy and for their children to not be healthy.
Is it because it's spreading through the air?
Through the air, in our water. There is glyphosate. That's the main ingredient of Roundup in the rain. Pesticides are found in every stream that we test. Our environment is so contaminated that we're finding these pesticides everywhere.
Okay. So, I guess I'm still just a little confused as to why the farmers would still do it if they, like, how exactly, are they subsidized specifically just to, like, here's some pesticides. You have to use the pesticides, and if you use them, then we're going to give you a bonus, or a cut or a break or something. I mean, or is it just that they must use the pesticides in order to, I guess to explain that a little bit.
I mean, this goes to the level of getting a loan from the bank for your farm. That practices can be specified in that loan. We'll give you the loan if XYZ, right? Farmers are very tangled up in a system that is perpetuating this chemical intensive agriculture. For those farmers who transition to organic production, they're taking that risk on their own. They are taking on the financial risk. And imagine you've got young kids, you're taking on a huge risk to transition your farm. We do know that there are some companies that are helping farmers transition. We have some government programs. We've won these now in the past decade or so. The U.S. Department of Agriculture increasingly understands the value of organic and has been, in small ways, we'd like a lot more, but has been putting thought and money towards helping farmers transition to organic. We are really concerned because some of that money, some of those programs have been defunded this year. And so we need people to call their legislators, demand that those organic programs get full funding, that the National Organic Program stays fully staffed. This is really critical to our family's ability to access the safest food.
Yeah. So the government is handing out subsidies to farms that use pesticides, but they're cutting subsidies or help aid for organic farms.
Yes. Yeah. So they have cut organic, they've defunded organic programs. There have been massive funding freezes for programs that help farmers farm better through conservation agriculture, right? So maybe they're not organic certified, but they are trying to implement practices that reduce their use of toxic inputs. They're not getting the money that has been promised to them, that they've signed contracts for. really critical staff at the US Department of Agriculture, the scientists and the advisors who know how to help farmers farm better, have been cut. So we're in a really dire situation, again, where we are going backwards. If our goal is to make America healthier again, these are the exact programs and exact staff that we need to help farmers do that.
Yeah. And you're saying that this is all controlled by the pesticide industry and their lobby, that they're basically trying to strong arm farmers into using their products by bankrupting them if they don't, essentially, by saying, well, you won't get any help from the government if you don't use our products, essentially.
Right. There's a flow of influence from the pesticide industry to our lawmakers. And you can see that in that letter. So this is 79 Republican politicians, both Senate and House, who sent a letter to the Mahab Commission, and it asked them to take pesticides off the agenda. And that we know the pesticide industry spends millions on lobbying. They have enormous influence over our leaders and over the Environmental Protection Agency. And this is totally counter to the mandate that this administration came in on, which is to make America healthy again. And it's it's also completely out of touch with the American public, because no matter who you are, no matter how you vote, you want safe food.
Yeah.
And so we need our leaders to be standing up to the pesticide industry.
Well, and this is why when RFK Jr. was made Secretary of Health and Human Services, one thing that Nicole Shanahan had talked about was that they were working hard to get the right person to be appointed for the Secretary of Agriculture, but they essentially lost that battle. And the person that was put in there is just like another corporate, in the pocket of probably pesticides and all of these other big corporations. And they were even talking about how that was a big piece of it. They wanted the right person for the Department of Agriculture, and they did not get that person.
Yeah. The spirit of where Kennedy is coming from is completely the antithesis of how the Environmental Protection Agency has operated and does operate. And unfortunately, Kennedy does not have jurisdiction over pesticides. He can't make those decisions. That is Lee Zeldin, who was put in as head of the EPA.
Oh, EPA.
And we know it. Yeah.
So it wasn't Brooke Rollins, who's I believe that's her name, that's in charge of agriculture?
Yeah. So Brooke Rollins is the head of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So she's overseeing the National Organic Program. She needs to be hearing from us to keep organic strong. And she also has a lot of decision-making power over those programs I mentioned, the conservation agriculture programs that have been gutted. Lee Zeldin at the EPA is the one who has decision-making power over pesticides.
Okay.
And we know from his track record, he is very pro-industry. He has opposed environmental regulations. He has appointed people at the EPA whose job is to evaluate and assess new chemicals, who have spent decades in the chemical industry. One person in particular who is a former chemical industry lobbyist who fought against regulations of formaldehyde, a known carcinogen. Right? So this is the fox guarding the hen house. This is the story over and over again at the EPA. Our EPA is so behind the times, so not following the science, that 85 different pesticides are allowed in the US that are banned in China, Brazil, the European Union. Because the science is clear. They're harmful to our health. They're harmful to the environment. So, I think people have been really excited because Kennedy has long been a vocal opponent of the pesticide industry. He's argued, and he's right, that they've manipulated science, they've manipulated the public opinion, and they have influenced policy to keep their products on the market. But here we are in this situation where, we have somebody who has that decision-making power over pesticides who is not aligned.
This administration has been, in a lot of ways, so disappointing on that front. Like we're going to end wars, but let's increase the defense budget to $1 trillion. We're going to make America healthy again. But then you got Kennedy out there talking about, just a bunch of rather random stuff that has nothing to do with health. And then now this type of thing where it's, we don't want to be eating garbage. We don't want to be eating all these chemicals. We don't want to be injecting or having them injected into us or whatever, all of these things that are happening to us. And what is happening? Where is the change? It just seems that even the good people who want to make change, like Kennedy, still get shoved up against a wall by other forces. That, it's because we have such a large bureaucracy. The fact that we have the Department of Agriculture and the EPA and the Health and Human Services, like all of them are three different things, and then it's just a train wreck. He's one guy, but the other two agencies are led by two other people who are pro-industry. So what do? It's just disappointing, super disappointing. What can people do to, today to reduce? You say that each of us would have like 30 pesticides in our system. What can we all do today to try to minimize the harm that is being done?
So we know that organic food can rapidly decrease your exposure. We know this. We took 4 families across the country and we put them on a completely non-organic diet for a week. This is peer-reviewed research. Put them on an organic diet for a week. We tested their urine every day. The little kids loved peeing in the cup. And we found a whole host of pesticides in all of their bodies. That 1 week on an organic diet dramatically reduced their exposure. We saw levels drop 60% on average. For some of the chemicals, they dropped up to 95%.
Wow.
After 1 week on an organic diet.
So they did 1 week on a non-organic, and then you did 1 week. Then was it the very next week that you did on the organic diet? So it was 2 weeks that they
2
had
weeks in a row.
Okay. And it was a drastic difference, just that 1 week drop.
Drastic.
Wow.
So if people are interested in seeing those results and learning about those families, they can go to organicforall.org. And we've got the studies there. We've got a little 2-minute video about the families. But that study has been replicated. There are a dozen studies showing that organic works.
Yeah.
And so for people who want to reduce their exposure and their family's exposure, they, when they can, should be buying organic. And that's also supporting the organic farmers who are doing the right thing.
Yeah.
That said, we shouldn't have to shop our way out of this problem. We should not be in a situation where we need enough money in our purse to go in and buy the safest food. That should be the norm. And so our leaders need to hear loud and clear. The momentum behind Make America Healthy Again is not new. People have been outraged for decades, right? People are sick, and we're mad. And we need to continue that momentum and demand that the mandate given to this administration by the MAHA movement, by which, was pivotal in Trump winning, needs to be made good on.
Yeah.
And, organic needs to be expanded. There are some common sense things that the EPA could do. For example, ban the banned pesticides, ban those 85 that are already banned, follow the science. If people join our newsletter at FOE.org, friendsoftheearth.org, we're going to launch a petition soon, ban the banned pesticides. There are loopholes that the pesticide industry uses EPA policy to just keep known toxic products on the market. So close the loopholes, right? There are very straightforward things that can happen.
Okay. So now let's talk about the price of this, because a lot of people are thinking, well, I would love to eat all organic, but the cost of it is so expensive. So are you saying that the reason it's expensive is because our government subsidizes the wrongs? They're not willing to subsidize the organic food. Now, a lot of people will say, well, I don't want big government subsidizing it. I don't want handouts for corporations at all, right? But they are giving handouts. They're just giving handouts to other farms that they're not incentivizing the right stuff. They're incentivizing other things over the organic, and they're not willing to subsidize organic. Is that what's happening? And if they did subsidize it, then the cost of the organic food would go down.
Exactly. I mean, there's a reason why a bag of Fritos costs more than a bunch of carrots, whether or not those carrots are organic, right? Mm-hmm. So the system exactly is propping up the worst food, right?
So you're saying Fritos cost less or more than carrots?
A bunch of carrots, a bag of apples, Fritos, a bag of Fritos or chips tend to cost less.
Yeah, right? Less. Okay. Yeah.
Right. The food that is the least healthy is often the least expensive.
And that's due to government subsidies, because the government just won't subsidize.
Exactly.
They're subsidizing like the corn in the Frito, like the corn oil and all those other things that, or the high fructose corn syrup, right? All of that stuff, but they're not subsidizing or helping out the organic farmers.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So it is making us sick. And you're saying Europe doesn't do that. I've been to Europe several times, stayed long, extended period of times when I've been. And actually, I'm going to be in Italy for 2 months, starting actually in 3 weeks, and I'll be doing the show from there. But what I noticed is that I can't do big, large loads. I did it when a few years ago, I spent 3 or 4 months in Italy, and I acted like an American in the beginning. Or I'd go to the grocery store and I'd load up my cart, and then I'd get back to the house and I'd put it all in the fridge. And then within a day or two, it was all rotten. I mean, it was just, and then I realized, I have to do my shopping in small batches every day or every other day. I need to be going to the grocery store because the food rots very, very quickly in Europe. And is it because they're not using the pesticides, the preservatives, all of those negative chemicals?
Yeah, that I don't know. I mean, the fruits and vegetables, whether or not they're organically grown, should not be rotting any faster. I've noticed that like organic bread gets dry faster because there's not a whole bunch of nasty preservatives in it, right? So yeah, I mean that, and I should say all of this interest in getting rid of food dyes and food additives, dozens of those are banned in organic food. Mm-hmm. So this is not just about pesticides. This is about all sorts of problematic chemicals in our food that organic is protecting us from. Yeah. Also antibiotics in livestock production and growth hormones, also prohibited by the organic seal. And I should add also, this is not just about like what's not inorganic and therefore not in our bodies when we eat it. This is also about what organic is doing for the soil, for the environment. Going back to that idea of regenerative agriculture. Yeah. The fact that it's being co-opted and being applied to chemical intensive agriculture when we've got decades of research showing that organic is regenerative, that those goals, the healthy soil that we want, the bees and birds and biodiversity protection that we need to keep growing food into the future, organic is achieving that, right? Yeah. So if people hear nothing else, they need to understand we have the solution. We have this really incredible solution that works, and we need our policymakers to be supporting it and expanding it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it sounds like we need to step up and yell at our legislators and tell them, hey, this is part of the movement that, what we wanted, what we supported when Donald Trump was elected, and you guys better stick to it or else. There needs to be that stick to it or else. And it would be helpful if Trump used the bully pulpit and said to these legislators, stick to it or else. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to make America healthy again. That is the most powerful position for the president. It's mostly the bully pulpit. To be able to get up there and say, look, these guys are going against our agenda. These are the ones I'm exposing. These are all Republican legislators. They claim that they're MAGA and MAHA, but they're not. And here's why they're not. That is extremely effective. And unfortunately, he's just not doing that right now, which he really should. And maybe he would. He doesn't like to be disliked. So that's one good thing about him. He can be persuaded by the people. A lot of them can't. What I like about Trump is that he actually can be, because when he feels unpopular, suddenly he's like, wait a minute. What do I need to do to be liked again? And this would be one of those things. If we just put the pressure on and say, hey, this is part of the MAHA movement and we don't want it buried. This is how you got elected. So stick to it, buddy. Then maybe we'd actually see that change. So I guess we got to get loud, right? That's what we got to do.
We need to get so loud. This needs to be a huge outcry because, the Senate MAHA caucus. So the senators are saying we're leading on MAHA. They don't mention organic in their agenda. Mm-hmm. They use the term regenerative ag. Well, that's going to be smoke and mirrors. Yeah. And so, yes. People need to be very vocal. All of the anger over our own sickness, our kids' sickness. I'm a mom. That responsibility is so enormous to keep our kids healthy, and it is so maddening that it's this hard.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be this hard. In a wealthy, advanced society, it should not be this hard to keep your kid healthy.
Yeah. And who knows what it will change health wise for America? If we'll see fewer cancers, more fertility, fewer mental illnesses. I mean, I know people always want to say that the mental illness thing is like, oh, it's just a trend. It's a woke agenda. And I'm like, well, what if it's actually food poisoning? I mean, we just have been, there's so many poisons going into us from medicines and pesticides and just the environment, then there's, who knows what all the wireless internet and all that stuff is doing to us. I mean, we don't really know. People say, oh, it's a big conspiracy theory if you think 5G is doing something bad to you. And I'm like, how do you know if it is or isn't? Have you studied it? It's just, we don't really actually know. This stuff is all brand new. When I was a kid, it didn't exist. So we're talking about, very new stuff, and we don't know how it's affecting our whole biology. We do know in some cases how badly it is affecting our biology.
Well, I was going to say, the thing with pesticides, they've been here since the 50s. And so we do know. We've got decades of research that are showing us that they're harming us. And pesticide use is on the rise. So when we were kids, we had less exposure. I grew up in Wisconsin. There was less Roundup being used at that time. And that use is on the rise in the United States and globally, despite the fact that we have all of this research showing how harmful it can be. And, I like to give this example because people raise the question, like, do small exposures matter? Oh, it's just these really small amounts on our fruits and vegetables, and not just there, right? It's in the bread, it's in our crackers, it's in the Cheerios. Yes, it matters. And here's an example of why. We prescribe medication to children like Ritalin to regulate their brains. Mm-hmm. American children exposed to neurotoxic pesticides called organophosphates. Pesticides we know cause brain damage. We know they're linked to ADHD and other neurological problems. They're exposed at similar levels to like a dose of Ritalin, right? So our kids are being dosed by the food that they eat with neurotoxic chemicals.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the mental illness. There is data showing that pesticides can increase risk of depression, right? They are really derailing so many systems in our bodies.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I believe it. I definitely believe it. So, so interesting. So, and alarming. Kendra, thank you so much for being here and sharing this information with us. I do think more awareness needs to be raised on this. I do think that the food is poisoning us, the environment's poisoning us, and really the government is aiding and abetting it. So that's kind of the takeaway here. We have to get a little bit louder and scream about this and say, hey, we want MAHA. We're here to make America healthy again, and we demand it finally. So Dr. Kendra Klein, thank you so much for being here. We do have the links down below to the letter, but the report that you guys published just this last Tuesday, and also to the, what was the other link that you had that you want us to post to?
Yes, it's organicforall.org.
Okay, and organicforall.org. We got that down below, and also where people can follow you on X. You're on X, right? Everybody's on X. Are you on X?
I'm on Blue Sky now.
Oh, you're on Blue. Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. I don't have Blue Sky, but we'll put the link down below just for those who do. Dr. Kendra Klein, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
Hey guys, thanks for watching this clip from the full Kim Iverson show. You can catch the full show Monday through Friday. It is live streamed for about an hour. It is completely free to watch. Just go to KimIversonShow.com. That is where you'll catch the full show. Again, Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. See you there.